I've slowed down. No, I'm back. I'm back up to speed. Good. Okay, I got to check out. Make sure I don't go. Oh! Here we are, and we're live already. And I'm
It
mid
worked.
sentence. That's okay. No one's watching. No, it's no pressure. There's no pressure.
None.
Okay.
None. Just two buds
So
drinking and talking accents.
drinking and talking. That's what we're doing. So welcome back to everybody who's come back for a second time, or I guess really a third time, because we did have a
Yeah, this
little.
is number 3. Lucky number
Yeah,
3.
yeah, it's kind of number 3.
This is when we're going
And
to break through.
yeah, exactly. And so we're back in the dialect dive, and so just wondering, what are you drinking today, Leslie? It looks really interesting.
I'm drinking a concoction. It has the main ingredient is mezcal. I'm a tequila girl, so it's mezcal. It's some
Tequila.
Campari, some simple syrup, a little lemon. I mean, excuse me. Hello, what's the fruit? Orange zest. It's something Negroni-ish, but it's what we well, the inspiration, it was going to be a mezcal old fashioned, and we didn't have sweet vermouth. So this is what my genius husband came up with instead. It's colorful, kind of matches the background of the dive here, so it works.
It does, and because you've got your own mixologist there as well, right?
You know, it's important to have a live-in mixologist. He definitely has some tasks ahead of him on Friday evening after a long week, so yeah, had to get him started.
Awesome.
How about you?
As for me, I'm drinking this Innocent Gun. Now, when I mentioned this earlier to you, you said you'd never heard of this, but it is a Scottish beer, and usually, like the default version of this is, it is brewed in whiskey barrels, as you would expect in a Scottish brewery, probably. But this particular one. This one's unusual because this one, I got it today because they every now and then do these one-offs, which is, this one is in a rum cask. So slightly different flavor to it. So yeah, Innocent Gun. It's great Scottish beer. Absolutely fantastic. And of course, a good beer like that, you have to drink it out of a glass.
Look at
you can't go straight from the can. You know,
look at you.
Got to go fancy. So, who we chatting to today? I understand we've got
our guest in the dive, Mary McDonald-Lewis. Yes, isn't that a great name? She is an actor. She's a voiceover actor. She's done amazing work there. Well, I'm sure we'll dig into that with her. Some really fun things that our viewers, I know, will know. And she's a dialect and an accent coach. And that's my history with Mary Mac. That's how we met. We met at a Voice and Speech Trainers Association conference a number of years ago. And yeah, it's been a fun friendship and an exchange of resources ever since. And so very excited that she was available to sit with us this afternoon and talk accents and her work, and it's going to be amazing. She's a lot of fun to be with. So
great. Well,
and really I wonder what she's drinking.
So I understand she's right there in the waiting room. So we better bring her in.
Let's pull up a stool for Mary Mac
before she disappears and does something more important.
Goes drinking somewhere else.
Hey,
she has a fancy glass too. Actually, we all do. Cheers to fancy glasses.
That out. What are you drinking, Mary Mac? Nice to meet you, by the way.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Mark and Leslie. It's just a thrill to be with you again.
Yes.
I have also joined you from the island, Mark. I'm drinking Jameson Black Barrel. Now, I'm a Jameson girl, and I like my JMOs neat. I don't think there's any reason to pollute a drink this nice by adding water or ice.
It's a single malt, right?
It's a blend.
Oh, that's a blend. Okay.
Yeah, blend.
But if it's a good blend, yeah, why would you adulterate it?
Yeah, it's a very fine blend. My top shelf blend is the Green Spot, but this is a new favorite of mine. Now, I've been a Jameson's girl, mid-shelf JMO's girl forever, but Jameson Black Barrel, I highly recommend it. It's a good price. It's a reasonable price, and it's soft, caramelly, butterscotch. It's warming. It's a great year-round drink. It's not too heavy. And then, of course, with autumn coming on here in Portland, Oregon, it's kind of the perfect drink. So, cheers to you guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh.
I can't toast. My drink disappears. There it is.
In the Welsh, we would say iechyd.
Iechyd. Yeah. Iechyd, boyo. All right. There's lovely then.
Iechyd, boyo. There's health to you.
So how much are Jamieson's paying you, Mary Mac, for this?
Right? Indeed. That's the gig you need.
The commercials contract is the struck, so I can still work on the voiceover side.
Well, that's a good place to start. That's how we'd like to start this conversation with you, Mary Mac. How did you get started in this work? You've been at it for a while. You've had some amazing projects through the years, and really curious to know what I think the entry point for a lot of accent coaches, dialect coaches, may be similar. Maybe it's through the acting route, or maybe not. I think it's becoming more and more diverse. So, how did you get into it?
Thanks, Leslie. And, Mark and Leslie, as you know, from taking your own training, dialect coaches or would-be or becoming dialect coaches arrive. It's kind of like there's this mountain, like Richard Dreyfuss's mountain, made out of mashed potatoes in the middle of nowhere. And there's all these little nomads that are making their way, earnestly with their backpack on the mountain. And we come from all corners of the world in terms of our passions and our interest. I have some general thoughts about that. I think that we could identify together some through lines which are true for all of us.
Yeah.
In my case, I'm a 40-year union voice actor, SAG and AFTRA, and now, of course, SAG-AFTRA were merged.
Yeah.
I started out in animation, actually. One of my earliest jobs as a voice actor was the voice of Lois Lane in Super Friends. And then I went on to play a lot of cartoon characters, which are now very deeply steeped in and enduring in pop culture. I just did an appearance at a Comic-Con last week. Generally speaking, people want to talk to me about my role as Lady J on a show called G.I. Joe. And it gives me more pleasure than I deserve to go to these Comic-Cons and to just make people happy.
Yeah.
My only job is to affirm their childhood memories, their love of this show and the other shows that we've all been on, And so it's a dear delight that work continues. And in fact, I was the voice of Ivan, and it's kind of funny. I'll tie that together. I was the voice of Ivan on Buzz Lightyear. Ivan is the interactive voice activated navigator for Buzz's ship. And one of the reasons that I was cast on that show by the director, I was offered the job as opposed to auditioning for the job, was because the director, had grown up with me as Lady J. I was the first voice he done with, and G.I. Joe was the show that inspired him to go into animation.
Oh,
so that's cool.
That's cool.
And then when he learned I was the voice of OnStar, so you get into a car. A million people millions probably have heard me say, "Welcome to OnStar." And I thought, well, if Lady J did OnStar, then Lady J should be the voice of
Of course. That it only follows logic.
It's not rocket science.
Well, in Lightyear it is, actually.
But what's cool about voice acting, obviously, is you can do it forever. And and I've done it forever. My home studio is right over there, and I've got great agents, and I'm also I sit on the SAG-AFTRA National Board representing Oregon and Southwest Washington. So my job is to care for the union members in this market, as well as obviously care for members nationwide, but specifically. These guys are on my watch here locally.
Yeah. You care for them well. I know you're very active, and they love you.
I love
from where I am.
Thank you. Thanks. I love trade labor. I love being in a union. I'm such a firm unionist, I think that the only way that we can ever, I'm really not interested in, defeating management. That kind of notion is not how I see the world. But the best way for us to work cooperatively with management is to let them know that there's hundreds of thousands of us right here.
Yeah.
I'm totally down with that. I completely understand you there, Mary Mac, because I've and I don't want to like take this to sideline this conversation, but I've been a union president in a formal life for a completely different union, but I've been there, representing people, right? So I totally understand what you're saying, and yeah, absolutely. The whole idea of being able to have negotiations where instead of like trying to just to be able to defeat management, I don't want to sound like a shill or anything, but it is a case of like just being able to kind of play the game to the point where you can actually shift things and effect change and actually get meaningful change out of those negotiations, as opposed to just saying, nope, that's it, nothing, we're not listening. It's got to be, it's a game. It's a game you play with very real consequences.
It's a compromise where no one is really happy, and that's a true, genuine compromise. Management, wanted to give less, and we wanted to get more, but we got what we got, and there's a fairness that comes out of that tension that I think is very, very important. And as you know, Mark, from your experience, and I can hear the unionist in you as you speak. I can hear your passion. This, the idea of standing for the working woman and man is deeply meaningful, and Leslie and Mark, I'll say this as well. From when I moved to Portland, Oregon to raise my daughter 30 years ago, I didn't want her to grow up in Los Angeles. I wanted to, more to the point, I wanted to create a Pacific Northwest soul. And so I raised my daughter here. She's now living in San Francisco, which I call Portland for grown-ups. You'll know I'm not there.
For some grown-ups.
Yes, exactly. But when I moved here, it was imperative to me that we raise the bar, and that we, particularly on the dialect side, that we improve, that I put my shoulder to the wheel of improving the theater scene. And then, of course, right after that, the film television scene on the dialect side. And what happened for me was, you asked how I kind of got here. I discovered that because I was teaching ESL at the University of Portland, that was kind of my little
language people.
That's right.
ESL teacher.
Yeah, it was a brilliant career in LA. I adored the work. And I'm going to bring that back to kind of where I think that connects on our side of the mountain of Richard Dreyfuss's mashed potatoes. I discovered that I could go to school for 50% tuition remission because I was teaching ESL on that campus. It was my little stepping stone job before I got myself established as a voice actor up here and maintained my relationship in Los Angeles and all that. So I'm like, 50% tuition remission. I'll go back and get my MFA just for fun. I had no reason other than to make myself a more interesting cocktail party guest to myself.
And look, you're here now.
It worked it off.
Look how far you've come.
Yes, exactly. But in going back to school, I re-immersed myself in theater because in LA, I was just doing voiceovers. And that led to, as you guys know, if you can kind of do accents, pretty soon people are asking you to do them. And so I started doing accent support in theater kind of around town. And then one day, because I was already the national board member for SAG-AFTRA, and the policymakers in the state knew me from my advocacy work, the film commissioner called me up one day and said, "Hey, Mary Mac, you're a dialect coach, aren't you?" And I said, yes, I am. I am.
Go.
Yes.
He said, well, there's a Hallmark film in town, and they need some support, and you're hired. Go drive out there. You're hired. And I always say I was glad that set was about an hour and 40 minutes from Portland, because I needed that hour and 40 minutes to figure out what the hell a dialect coach was.
Do your breakdown as you're driving in.
Don't let me down. I'm sorry. I apologize for everything. Please help me. So it wasn't long after that I joined Vasta, which is where I met Leslie. And then I took formal training at that point, because it's no damn good. You mustn't ever enter into a world like this without a foundation, a scholarly foundation in the work. And Mark, I want to bring it back, and Leslie as well, to one of the through lines that I think exists. And that is that for those of us who are attracted to a profession that is largely led by love,
yes,
and that is led by, as a fundamental concept, helping people find their voice, which is where ESL plays into this. This profession is ideal for us, because we're giving these actors wings. And we are equipping them with what they need to feel confident, to banish shame. Shame is it's very huge for me. It's a very huge notion. This notion of, let's put this to rest. Let's put this to rest and just fly,
Yeah.
For us to have a career where we're fundamentally loving people forward and setting them free.
Yeah,
exactly.
Better than this, right?
And there's so much, and so much as a part of that is giving people that confidence, because and giving them permission to speak, permission to take
mess it up,
and still respect that they are a guest in whatever the accent is that they're doing, but to have respect for it, to have love for it, and then to allow them, like you say, like that's a wonderful analogy, is like giving them wings, to fly, and then saying, okay, go for it. You're gonna fall. You're definitely gonna fall. Yeah, you're gonna make mistakes, but if you don't make those mistakes, you're not gonna be able to do this properly. And it's like, you just got to make that jump. Exactly. That's a good
point. Mary, I
point.
remember distinctly that weekend that you and I spent together talking accents in Portland. And that was just such a mountaintop experience for me. I'm still just so grateful that you had me out there. But one of the things you told me that really sticks with me is, when you're doing this work and you're helping an actor get ready and working through an accent, that one of the best things you can do is just love on them. Just provide that nurturing, that care, that, like Mark was saying, you're going to fall, here's the net. Because it can be very anxious work. Sometimes they come to this work with huge anxiety, fear. Maybe they've had a bad experience, or told they had done it wrong in another project, or just inherently fearful of modifying their voice or their speech in some way. And you just really have to lay down the stepping stones of love so that they can step into it more easily. That was a huge lesson for me. I think about it all the time. Yeah. Well,
that's very well said. And I think that the three of us and the dialect coaches that we respect and admire experience that live and in person anytime that we're working with somebody. I have a question for you guys. You just said something that really struck me, Leslie. It's that notion of modifying your voice. I don't think, in my experience, there's nothing more naked than bringing out your voice, than voicing something. You feel, for folks who are not used to living in dialect land, I think they feel almost, there can be moments where an actor feels almost mortally afraid.
Yes.
And my question for you is, as we have encountered actors through the years on set or on stage who have that fear, and who pretty early on in your working with them, you figure out, oh my goodness gracious, this man or this woman is scared to death. What's kind of what do you do? How do you respond to that? Kind of in the moment. I mean, you've got a goal, that they're going to come knock on that door in the next few minutes. I'd love to hear from you guys.
I think I'm sure Mark might have a different answer, or maybe since we've had some similar training, and have seen each other coach, I think that an icebreaker, if you will. Hello, microphone. I don't know if that's the best word. I'm not sure I like that word, but just something to shake off the nerves that I like to do is just have a little quick chit chat. How was your day? What did you have for breakfast? Be silly, be crazy, just not think about the work for a second. And then maybe just softly step in and ask them, what do you know about this accent that we're shooting for? And it's okay to say you don't know anything. Let's just talk about it. What feelings does it raise in you? And whatever answer you give right now is totally okay. And that usually, I mean, it kind of opens a floodgate. It's either I can't wait to do this, I've been wanting to do this, or I'm terrified and I know I'm going to mess this up and it's going to take me forever, or something in between, but there's always an answer. And it's because I think as humans, we want to be open about our struggles with the person who provides that safety. And so establishing that safety from the start really sort of builds that trust right away. And trust is key in that work.
Yeah.
Mark, what do you think?
You said a lot of really what I was thinking, because I was thinking that, like, when it comes to fear, in a way, as coaches, we're kind of unofficial therapists as well.
Big time.
So a lot of the things that we do are kind of a therapy, and it's not until you start doing the coaching that you realize that it's more than just telling people how this accent sounds out of coming out of people's mouths. So I think that really what it is, you've got to find out, you've got to try to get to what the core of this fear is. What is driving the fear? Because, we're all afraid of different things, right? So many people are afraid of death. Others are afraid of spiders, but when it comes to this, it's like, what is it that you're actually afraid of? And so trying to figure out what that is in the least painful way, I think, is really the way forward. So I think you're right, Leslie, getting to the point where you get them into a zone of comfort, get them to a point where they understand that they can trust you. They can breathe, they can be themselves with you, and to understand that you're not there to judge them, right? I have a stupid phrase that I use, which is, I'm not here to judge, I'm here to nudge. So what I try to do is I say, okay, I let them tell me and take me through what their process is that works for them. But I'll try to find out what it is. What's your version of the accent? Like just exactly the same that you said.
Right.
What do you know about it? What do you think about it? What do you want to work on specifically, if there is anything specific? Sometimes they're just like, okay, I'm an open book. Like, okay, just you take me through it like a Sherpa. And some people are like, okay, there's just, I'm not so sure. So you got to figure out what that is, and then just allow that. Just like Mary Mac, this as having been an ESL instructor, allowing that safe space for people to, if you'll forgive my French, fuck up. Allow that safe space to be able to explore things and not have to think they got to be perfect, because it won't be. It's like, you got to make the mistakes, because if you don't make mistakes, what am I here for? I'm here not to correct you, but to guide you into a zone of acceptability, what is going to fit for whatever this project is going to be. So it's really getting them comfortable, getting them to trust you to that point where it's like, okay, figure out what works for them, and then going for it in terms of what resources you have and the time as well. What time you have.
If you're lucky.
I think too that some of the actors who might be the most anxious about stepping into another's voice are anxious because they recognize what that means, how important the voice is, and especially if it's the voice of another culture, something that they don't, Mark, you used the word, they're a guest in that, and they recognize the weight that carries. That's a healthy fear. And that's a fear that we can work through and they're actually ahead at that point. But sometimes that can really bring a sense of, bring someone into the room feeling that burden, and that burden is heavy, and that affects your body and affects the way you move about things. So, to release someone from that, to say, it's okay, we're going to mess up at first, but the end goal here is that, yes, you will represent this authentically and truthfully, and we'll get there. So,
I come at it a little differently. Leslie, you used the word icebreaker. One of the words that I use in my mind as I'm thinking about it is, what's the door in? What's the door in?
That's good. Yeah.
To this actor, and certainly this dialect, but what's this door in? The notion of screwing up is interesting to me. Because what we do is, certainly as KT trained dialect coaches, is at once biomechanical, but more than anything else, really, it's biomechanical. I come at it from the point of view of a scientist and detectives. I call ourselves, me and my client. So we're dialect detectives. We've got our magnifying glasses and our deerstalker hats, and we're on the hunt, man.
Love it.
But then I also say we are scientists. This is a scholarly pursuit. I have four columns that hold up my dialect acquisition: pronunciation, posture, prosody, and the last one, pixie dust. Where the magic is, right? Pronunciation, posture, prosody, and pixie dust. And so I say, as a scientist, our first job is to attempt to disprove our hypothesis. So that means all of the times that we find that what we're doing isn't quite in alignment with what we're going for, that's marvelous, because we're being good scientists. And we're saying, okay, that's not it's not a retroflex tongue, and the tongue is channeling here. Awesome. And
progress.
What that does, and within that world, of course, there's no shame, because you're doing it right. The adaptation of a dialect from a different culture, I personally have no weight attached to that. In my world, everyone is allowed to manifest every single accent in the world. Every accent belongs to everybody. And so I don't bring cultural values to the work I do. I bring pronunciation, posture, prosody, and pixie dust. I feel like if there's thought that needs to be given to the role the actor is playing, that has to do with some of those more modern concepts, that's their work. That's not mine. My job is to teach sound.
Yeah, that's great.
One of the things that I've been saying lately, it's so interesting as you evolve in your work, right? When I first began, I was interested in these large, trying to stay within my frame here, large chunks of language. And then it got kind of littler and littler and littler. And then it disappeared altogether. And I moved into quite simply the realm of sound. And where I sit today, the thing that I say to my actors is, sound is energy made audible. Yes,
that's beautiful.
And where that energy comes from is a subject for another day, or perhaps late night after the film wraps. But look at what we're given, these tools, which the three of us and our dialect colleagues fine tune as much as we can. At the end of the day, these are very crude tools and words and syllables. They're very crude, but what's behind it? What's pushing it? And I think that's where we get into some of the colors and the things that aren't scientific, but which are in fact.
So, and that's also a good.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna come in with a question for Mary Mac, but Leslie, go ahead.
I was just going to tack on to that to say that that's also great that energy made audible works for other speech work that might not be tied to accent. So some of my clients that are just struggling to be better at expressing themselves, because that's a step toward presence is what you're talking about. And so, let's identify what's the energy and how do we give sound to that. And that's the foundation for whatever comes later regarding specific speech techniques or sounds or whatever. But that's the foundation, and that's putting it very well. Yeah.
It's exciting. It's exciting work.
Yeah, that's true in acting. So, I mean, Mary Mac, you've been coaching for quite a few years, and just wondering, what are some of the changes that you've seen in the industry, like specifically with regard to the perceived importance, like how much importance is put on acting work for actors?
How cool is that, right? Oh my gosh, it's so great. Remember when we were our various stages of younger. And here on the screen comes Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice. And all of us are like, what the hell is she doing? And how does she do it? Before that, there was sort of Peter Sellers, who was fantastic, but his was always something of a bit of panto, wasn't it, Mark?
Yes, exactly.
We heard kind of the one-off, somebody doing a one-off, so on and so forth, but we didn't hear accent and dialect and language, in her case as well, genius. And here comes Meryl Streep, and the world just lost its mind. Took notice, and yet it was still, and I know you'll agree, it was still many years before people really took it on. And Mark, I think that we have seen both a broadening and a narrowing. We've seen a tremendous interest, thank God, for our careers and our mortgages. A tremendous interest in accuracy, in not only region, but in time and place, which is one of my favorite things. I love critique accents. They're just so beautiful. And so we've seen that, and that's opened the door. As I like to say, an actor with 5 accents is 5 actors. And who doesn't 5 actors or 10 or 20? So that's opened the door for so many people. I've seen a narrowing, driven largely by politics, having to do with who has ownership of particular dialects. I don't subscribe to that. I think that the more speech we have, the more we encourage speaking, the more we encourage voice, the greater the likelihood that we'll achieve peace in our time and connection. And connection.
So well said.
So I that's kind of not a world that I live in, although I understand that it's popular with some folks.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
And I think that's what I would say, how I've seen it change. Certainly the level of professionalism, which is really terrific.
What are you seeing from your involvement in SAG-AFTRA and your years of union activity? I mean, how has that work changed because of others' perceptions of the importance of dialect accuracy or accent accuracy?
Sure. Well, you guys, I tried for many years to get SAG-AFTRA to organize Dialect Coach work.
Yes.
And I would love I think that SAG-AFTRA makes the most sense for us. And I took that right to the executive director. I mean, I've sat in the executive director's office. These people are longtime friends of mine. And I've sat there and I've sent them, white papers and had phone calls and sat in their offices and had drinks with them and said, why don't you organize this? The two things that are in our way, the first, he said that senior staff didn't quite get it because we're not behind a mic or in front of a camera. But then again, neither is the guy that teaches the woman to ride a horse. And that's a SAG actor. The stunt coordinator may or may not be working the film. They're maybe just they're coordinating, but they're a SAG-AFTRA actor.
You're right.
That's the first thing that's slowing us down or that stopped us in our tracks. The second thing is, and Mark, you'll resonate with this. not every dialect coach wants to be unionized.
Mm.
And that has to do with a fundamental concept, a mistaken one in my opinion, that they can get more on their own than they can with the union.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and there's the added complication, which is that SAG-AFTRA is the USA, and that stops at the border with Canada. And I'm in Toronto. So it's another, and that's a whole other.
Except Mark, I think, your former exec, Steve Waddell, longtime friend of mine, great guy. If we organized in the States, ACTRA would be right behind. ACTRA would be right behind it. And we'd have to see what British Equity would do. Yeah, we'd have to see. But I can't think of another union. We don't belong to the Directors Guild. We don't belong to the Writers Guild. We're not Teamsters, although some days it feels like it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know that this struggle has been going on for some years now, obviously, because I've been following this, but I know totally exactly what you mean by, there is that idea that, well, on my own, then I can figure it out. But the truth of the matter, is that, the thing is you pretty much most people go with what is the going rate. And when you're alone, when you're not a part of a union, then you are alone, and you're not protected. So it's a struggle we still are left with.
And the crazy thing, Mark, and again, I know that this is familiar to you. The person who thinks that they can get more on their own is always is a person who's going to be throwing elbows, to get out to the front. When I was born with trade labor glasses on, I just was. It was never a question for me. I think a true unionist isn't concerned with whether they're going to be getting more or less than their fellows.
Yeah.
A true unionist is concerned with with the collective.
Everyone gets.
With what's fair. Exactly. With what's fair. Yeah.
And so maybe someday we'll organize. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing for you guys to have pensions and healthcare and legal?
I'm sorry, hang on a minute. What's a pension?
What is this pension? What is this pension?
You're going to look that up on the computer.
On the magic box.
I'm living in my pension. This is it.
This is your pension, kiddo. This is it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's right.
Have you guys ever had a client where you've just thought to yourself, oh boy, this is as far as I'm going to be able to go with this guy? And what have you done under those circumstances?
I think
now you're interviewing us.
I know. How did this happen? Get her out of here.
Just turn the tables on us.
I need more time.
We need sipping time. I think I always say that a good coach, or at least my definition for myself of being a good coach, is that you set them up to continue the work after you.
Great.
And that you instill the importance of the work so that hopefully, if they've not made it very far with you, they know the importance of it, and they've learned to observe themselves, observe others, and that they'll continue on the path, even if it's not with you. Now that's, setting aside the issue of, well, I worked with Leslie and I still sound like this, but, ultimately the ultimate win is that they continue the work on their own, and they have the skill set, or at least the curiosity to continue.
Yeah. It's, I would say
I can go to bed at night with that.
For sure.
That goes along with the teach a man to fish.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Rather
or to
than
pronounce fish.
Yeah.
Exactly. In the Irish, fash.
Fash.
In many different accents. Teach a man to transcribe fish.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Now you're my mind is. I find that one of the exciting things, as you're saying, is for people to get on fire around accent, and to see their eyes light up and go, "Oh my God, this isn't a mystery. This isn't a mystery."
Yeah.
I always lead off by saying, language, accent, and dialect work is not mysterious. It's not mysterious. It's just hard.
Yeah.
And hard is easy.
That's it.
Mysterious is impossible.
Yeah.
Hard is a walk in the park.
Right, exactly. And this is a really great point that you make, because part of our job is to make sure that actors, directors, producers, everybody involved understands that there is no mystery in this. Right? It's not like we're some kind of like magical guru. Like you mentioned science earlier, and what we're doing is we're applied linguists. We're applying science to a problem to come up with a solution, within a team of two, or sometimes it's more than two. But that's what we're doing. So it is not about mystery. This ain't magic. This is actually.
I wish it were in a way, but it's not.
Yeah,
but it is a little pixie dust.
There's some pixie dust.
So what is pixie dust? What is that to you? What does that mean?
Well, for me, if we move through sort of pronunciation, which is our dear lexical sets, thank you, John C. Wells.
Yes.
Posture, which we just love, when people discover that, Russian lives here, American lives at the Schwan, French lives the French kiss is given. Yeah. Oh, they're like, oh my God, pronunciation, posture. Our good friend, the vowel space, which is just so much fun. At one point, I was working with a table of actors on a theatrical project, and when folks are demonstrating various things around the table as we're learning how to learn, I generally will involve the director and the stage manager. Will say, "Hey, why don't you take a look at this text and see what you can come up with?" Because everybody should ante up in that first initial time where we're all learning, because they need to know what to listen for once I'm out of the room, number one. Right. Number two, they need to be vulnerable along with everybody else. And so this young man who was interning to the director, he was this little intern. He stuck the landing. He got it right, and it was something to do with the vowel space. And I couldn't stop myself. I sort of leaned across the table and I said, "Yes, William, there's a paradise inside your mouth." I meant it. I was so dorky and earnest. It
was he terrified? I think I would be terrified at that point. Oh my God!
Who is this woman? Oh, that's great.
Paradise inside your mouth. So pronunciation, posture, prosody, which I love, of course, which is the song of the sound, the poetry, the prose, and that's where, of course, we get to work with our beautiful timings. Is it syllable timed? Is it duration time? What's going on? Is it stress timed? Is it major key? Is it minor key? It's all juicy questions. Yeah. And as you can see, as we move in terms of my system, we're moving from the very scientific pronunciation, very pure biomechanical. Very precise, demonstrable, replicable. As scientists, we care about that. If you can't do that, it's bad science. Posture, which there's going to be some human variation, but there's going to be a great deal of similarity. Again, producing the sound. Prosody. We're starting to shift into the magic. Emotional response to this sound. People ask me, what's your favorite accent? Of course, it's like whichever one I'm getting paid for is my favorite one. Ask my bank, But if I had to pick one, I'm almost always going to pick Welsh, because it's just so musical and gorgeous. Then what does the Welsh accent remind me of? And it always reminds me of sheep jumping over a fence. Split the words along the syllable lines. Split the words along the syllable lines. So here we're finally starting to get into feelings with prosody, song of the sound. And then last but not least, pixie dust. And that is where we start painting with accent. Is she drunk? Is he seductive? Is he hiding something? Is she passing? Which you guys, we get to mess with that tool. So if she, if she, is hoping to be a higher class than she really is, and she's sort of rocking an estuary, sort of vague estuary sound. But when she gets a bit drunk, suddenly it changes, right? So, okay then. All right. Then let's use that. I mean, the tools that actors are given, the size of the toolbox when you start messing around with accents, is really quite something, isn't it?
Indeed. Yeah.
I have a story, and I'd love to hear your guys's in return. And that is that, again, as I told you, this notion of shame is something that really affects me strongly, because it's the difference between freedom and servitude. And if we have an opportunity to set people free, why wouldn't we want to? I mean, I have dog leashes in my car. Leslie, I know you can.
I know.
In case I come across a dog or a horse, it doesn't matter. I need to get that animal. I was working in New Orleans recently, and I'm driving back from being out in the country. I had a day off, driving along Levee Road, big levee here, and fields over here, and the mighty Mississippi on the other side of the levee. And here's an alligator in the middle of the road, and very still with people around him. People in Amish dress, which made it very strange.
Sounds like a dream.
Really, very much so.
It sounds like somewhere I know in Ontario, about 2 hours drive out from here in Toronto. But
yeah, exactly. Weird, wouldn't it? This again. But I stopped, and Leslie, as you can imagine, I said, "Has he been hit?" And they said, "We don't know." And I said, "Well, he may die, but he's not going to die in the middle of the road." And I, stopped the traffic and grabbed him by the tail and moved him off into the Everglades. And hopefully, too, they've got a pretty heavy skeletal system. But my point being that if you're a helper, you're going to help.
Hang on. Mary Matt.
I have video of this.
You stopped in the middle of the road and you dragged an alligator.
I believe this.
Off the side of the road.
I completely buy this.
He was a little under 4 feet long. I mean, he wasn't a granddaddy alligator. He was a youngster. But I have video.
Don't mess with the Mary Mac.
I'm telling you.
Woman who wrestles alligators.
That's your next tattoo, Mary Mac, wrestling the alligator.
Yeah, one in one blow. But what I wanted to bring up was this idea. I had an agent who called me, and she said, this actor, he had a series and he was making good money, and then the pandemic came, and now he wants to get back in the game, but he's a little bit brokenhearted, and he needs an Irish accent. And I got on the Zooms with him, and Leslie, like you said, it's like, okay, tell me about your experience working with dialect and so on and so forth. And he choked up and he said, in my performing arts institution, the teacher stopped the class to tell me, you're going to be one of those actors who just can't do dialect.
Oh, that does so much damage.
I mean, forever, permanent damage. Yeah. And it didn't have to be me. It could have been Mark. It could have been Leslie. It could have been any dialect coach worth their salt who would see that as an opportunity to go, oh, like you said, Mark, it's a little therapeutic. Let's set this to rights. Let's turn this around. And by golly, there were tears in that. There were tears in the room.
No doubt.
And he was this humiliated young man again, but then he wasn't anymore. He wasn't anymore, and he was never going to be again, ever. And this is what we get to do. And have you guys had similar experiences?
The first story that comes to mind actually is from a fellow coach.
Yes.
Who told, who I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Told the story of being just shredded by a professor. Somehow ripped him to shreds in terms of his acting and his accent performance and everything all at once. And there was a good bit of work, to my understanding, there was a good bit of work that followed that moment for him to, survive the shutdown that happened because of that, and then come out of it and build back to some courage to lean into accent work again and being a coach for others. Because
when he told us that was raw.
Tears.
That
Everyone in the room just,
goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Well,
like he was close to tears when he explained this to us.
And it was already years
crying.
and he was a success, and all that stuff.
But everyone was
legend.
surprised to hear that someone could have said that. Because everyone there held him in esteem already, and to hear that someone could have done such intentional damage, it was mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing. It's just the words of somebody that, somebody in power, somebody that he put his trust in, then said to him something like that, told him something like that you will never, there is no good sentence that, actually there are good sentences that come out of that. You will never go hungry, but something like, you will never do this. You're one of those people that, and then the negative that comes after it, that has so much impact on a young person.
It's cruel. It's a form of theft. Like, it's close to murder, but it's not even theft. It's robbery, because you're in the room where it happens. And I'm amazed that he not only came back, but really upset the apple cart, didn't he? He reversed the equation altogether. And he's made it a part of his work. Whoever this fellow is, our fellow colleague, your teacher, could then go into the world and go, I'm going to continue turning this around, and continue turning this around.
I have a different story to tell. Yeah, and that's it. Telling your own story.
Right.
Yeah. This has been such a beautiful conversation. Mary Mac, you're such a delight, and you're so wise and experienced and generous. Always generous to share what you know and share your gifts. And we've been so privileged to have you here.
Well, it is I who am privileged. I feel like we could just talk all day. We'd have to give ourselves another one.
Indeed.
And let the night turn to midnight, and let the musicians come in and start playing on the fiddle and the boran, and what a night we would have. So we'll have to walk in that direction, my friends.
Yes, we will. And I hope that night happens one day soon. Thank you again, Mary Mac. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I just feel like I was at home, and I loved hearing your stories as well. Good luck in everything. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for leading us. Keep leading us.
Yes. And thanks for everybody who will be watching this later.
That's exactly right. Welcome. Tell your friends. Tell your friends. Absolutely.
Indeed.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.